I've got an exciting live stream plan for you today. I've been thinking about how to do this topic for a really long time because I get so many questions on my video, How to Absorb Textbooks Like a Sponge. Look, I originally published it almost 8 years ago now, and it's closing in on 8.7 million views, well over 17,000 comments. I think it's closing in on 18,000 comments. And so it's really captured people's attention, their imagination. It's gotten results from people all over the world. And I want to thank you all for being there and enjoying it and appreciating it. But one of the things that I noticed in a recent video, I published some of the weird comments I get because I just thought that you'd enjoy it being a little bit funny. However, today, what I wanted to do is cover the most frequently asked questions I've ever gotten and kind of solve some issues for people. So by way of quick review, I've got the content that I originally put on the whiteboard in that room way back when. So the process for being able to absorb textbooks like a sponge means that you're going to approach a textbook differently than the way you read a novel. Normally, if you're reading a storybook or a novel or even a self-help book, normally you start at the beginning of chapter 1 and you read page by page straight on through. And that's typically how most people read a book. Well, textbooks are different because you've actually got to retain an awful lot of the information that is in the book. And it's very difficult if you just start at the beginning and try and go through over and over again. So what I did is I broke it down into a system that allows you to have multiple previews of the information so that it stays in your head. So you're absorbing the information from the book. You're actually learning the information. In my 10 top weirdest comments video, I talk about how people seem to misunderstand the concept of absorbing. All I mean is you want to get the information from the book into your head in the least painful way and the fastest way and the most long-lasting and beneficial way possible. So here is a quick review of the process. So first of all, you're going to flip through each page in that textbook. So when you open your book, and I've got a big book here. You've seen me use this one before on American history. And simply what you're going to do is you're going to pick whatever chapter you've been assigned or whatever chapter you've got to deal with. You're going to flip through one page after another and just get a lay of the land and have an idea of what's on each page, how long the chapter is, what it looks like. This is kind of like a movie a preview of coming attractions. Then the very next thing you're going to do is you're going to take a look at the quiz at the end. Now, not every textbook has one, but if your book has a quiz at the end, you want to read each question. Now, I'm going to cover some of the questions I've gotten on this topic as we go through this. But you're going to read the questions. And what that does is it gives your mind a target to shoot at. In other words, you're not just reading content, you're reading for specific content. Your mind has been activated as to what the author thinks you're supposed to get out of that chapter. So when you see it, you go, oh, wait a minute, I remember there was a question about this. All right, next, you're going to go through the bold print. And believe it or not, I've gotten some questions about bold print. And then the next preview is you're going to read the first and last sentence in each paragraph. Now, if there's any steps you're going to skip, that's the one to skip. However, if you really want to get the maximum value, don't skip that step. But if you're pressed for time, if you need to skip something, that's the one to skip. All right. Now, one thing I didn't put on the board back in that old video that I did talk about, I get a lot of questions on, and that is the next step. And that's this one here. And that is, you want to read the whole chapter. Now that you've gone through the preview steps, you want to read the chapter while you're taking notes. Don't underline, don't highlight with colored markers. Yeah, you can do all that stuff. But let me tell you, underlining or highlighting does nothing to get the information from the page into your head. I could teach a chimpanzee how to do that. But so you want to read the chapter and go through the chapter, and now you're going to take notes. All right. So that gives you the framework for what was taught in that video. All right. So now I want to cover some of the most frequently asked questions about this framework. All right. Now I'm starting to get some stuff. How can I avoid distractions? And okay, good. Well, I'm getting some interaction over here. Now, I appreciate you asking questions as I'm going. And I'm going to try to answer any live questions that I get. But I actually made up flashcards for myself to cover the most common questions I get. You know, I teach you to put your notes on flashcards, and I just want to let you know I practice what I preach. So, all right. So first of all, I get a lot of questions about how that original old video came about in the first place. So let me tell you a quick story. So I was attending a fairly new church, and they gave us an assignment to create now, small groups were ways that members of the congregation could interact with each other outside of church in non-religious types of formats. Now, yes, some people had small groups of Bible study and all of that, but some people had softball teams or tennis or pickleball, and so there were some people who were playing sports. Some people were doing things like sewing circles or book reading clubs. I decided I was going to do a small group on the topic of how to remember people's names. It's something that I've done public demonstrations of memory power, where one of my signature stunts is that regardless of how many people are in my audience, I'm able to go around the room and call every single person in my audience by name. And on YouTube, you'll see some videos of me doing it with just a ridiculous number of people to prove a point. So I figured, well, if the people at this church knew each other's names, it would help, connect people, bond people together a little better. And I had about 12 people that registered for the class, and we met in a public library. Now, this was a 6-week class, and in the 5th week, one of the women that was attending, who happens to be a colonel in the United States Air Force. I'm in Tampa, Florida. And so CENTCOM is the Central Command is headquartered here in Tampa, Florida. So she was a colonel in the Air Force, and she brought her school-age daughter with her because she was getting a kick out of what we were teaching. And the girl asked me, hey, what about textbooks? I'm in class and I struggled with my books. Now, because I've been a professional speaker literally for decades, the kind of stuff you see me teaching here, I have been doing since 1980. Yes, I'm as old as your grandparents. But I've been teaching this stuff since 1980. That's another story. However, when she asked me about it, I immediately dovetailed into a little riff. And because I've been a speaker, I video everything that I do. You never know when I'll get some good video footage, as this was probably the penultimate case of getting good video footage. And so when I reviewed the video, I wound up having this little 8.5-minute chunk of video that had a pretty clear beginning and end, and it was cohesive. And so I had to do very little editing. This was before I actually had a YouTube channel. I mean, I had videos on YouTube, but I didn't have anything that you would call a channel. I was, throwing some videos up every now and then, and didn't really have any idea what I was doing. And so I wound up putting this little 8.5-minute chunk of video on YouTube and just left it there. It did nothing for 2 years. And then in 2017, it began to get a little bit of traction. And then 5 years ago, April, as a matter of fact, exactly 5 years ago, April, I had a meeting with somebody who was doing a podcast. I was the first speaker at his leader cast. And after the presentation, this was in front of a live audience as well, I happened to mention, I've got this little video that seems to have taken on a life of its own. I've got like 40,000 views. I've got a couple of thousand subscribers. And he said, gee, I hope you've got it monetized. I had no idea what he was talking about. I went home. I began to study the subject. And so 5 years ago, April, is when I began to figure out that, hey, I want to be a YouTuber. So here I am in my late 60s reinventing myself. All right. So that's how the video originally came about. So it was done in a public library with a group of about 12 people that weren't there for learning about textbooks. They were there to learn about how to remember people's names. All right. So next. So my next question is, and this was probably the most common question I've gotten. What if my textbook does not have a quiz? Simple. You avoid that step. You skip that step. No big surprise there. So if it doesn't have a quiz, skip it. Some textbooks have a little review. Read the review if you want. Couldn't hurt. And so you just skip that step. Not every textbook has a quiz. All right. What's the next question? All right. Should we try to answer the questions at the end of the chapter? Well, at the beginning, when you're first reading that quiz, if your textbook has one, you won't be able to answer most of those questions. However, if you can, great. But that's not part of the process that I'm talking about. So I just want you to read the questions so you're giving your brain a target to shoot at effectively. All right, the next question, also on the subject of quizzes. Do you answer the quiz questions as you read or wait until completing the chapter? Well, I didn't address that at all in the video. And so, yes, after you've finished doing all of the steps, you've taken your notes, now, if you want to go back and read the questions and see if you can answer them all, that would be an ideal time to do it. All right, here's one that I get a lot, and I'm getting it a lot right now because a lot of you have already finished your final exams. Some of you are still taking final exams. A bunch of you are going to be taking final exams. And so a lot of people ask, I have an exam coming up. Will this technique help? Look, this is a great study technique. It is not designed for last minute test preparation. It just isn't. Yes, you can use it for that. So what you want to do is you don't want to wait for the very last minute to begin going through these steps. Look, this takes some time. This takes more time than you're probably used to. But here's the difference. In the long run, it's less time than you're used to. And that's because for most people, you have to read the same chapter over and over and over again, and it still doesn't stick. When you do it this way, where you're letting the information in a little bit at a time, and you're giving yourself multiple previews, what you're doing is you're creating more connections between the neurons in your brain. You're creating synapses that have a stronger signal. So when you're actually reading and taking notes on the chapter, and we'll cover more about taking notes in a moment because that's one of the questions. Now you don't have to go back and read the chapter over and over. You do this process once, but it is not really designed for last minute study preparation. That's why I've done videos on last minute study techniques. As a matter of fact, one of my viewers over here, the first guy that commented, Steve Walters, is a personal friend of mine. And I've done a video with Professor Steve Walters. He's a professor at a major college out in Ohio. I'm not going to reveal which one, but you certainly know the name of this school. And he's tuned in from Cyprus right now. So, hey, Steve. And anyway, all right, so I have an exam coming up. Will this help? Yes, but it's not really designed for last minute test preparation. Okay, here's another one. I've already graduated or finished my exams, and now YouTube sends me this stuff. Look, I use this technique. I'm 71 years old. I still use this stuff. I'm not taking classes the way you guys are for the most part. I am studying from videos about how to improve my YouTube channel. I've just recently started a course about how to improve my own course sales. Shameless plug. I do have a video-based training program called An Incredible Memory. Let's see, do I have it here? No, but you can learn more about it if you go to startremembering.com. You can get on my mailing list and stuff at startremembering.com. But I'll wind up publishing the link to my memory-based training course. It'll be in the description. It'll be in the comments and all of that. Anyway, getting back to the questions. This information is not merely for formal schooling. When I buy a new piece of gear and I have the instruction manual for it, what I do is, I want to learn how to use the new camera or the new gadget or gizmo that I just bought. And so rather than just starting at the beginning of the training manual or the instruction manual and reading straight through, I'll flip through, see what it looks like, see how many pages there are. A lot of times what I buy, the instructions book is thick, and then I find out it's written in 4 different languages. So I just go to the section on English and I realize, okay, now it's only a few pages. There's almost never a quiz, so obviously I can't do that step. But then I look at the subjects that are covered, and I don't do the first and last sentence on that, and I don't necessarily take written notes. But now that I have an idea about what's on the instruction book, and I know what the bold print are, what the highlights of the information are, now I've kind of prepared my mind for what it is I'm going to get. So don't look at this stuff as merely preparation for exams. Learning is a lifelong process. I hope that my life, that I'm leading by a good example here, that here I am at this age, still learning and still being a student right along with all of you. Okay, next. All right, I'm going to take a look over here at some of the comments. All right, I see what about a science book? Is it possible to absorb in 7 hours? How do you deal with procrastination? I just did a long form video on procrastination, 7 simple steps to overcome procrastination. By the way, if you're not subscribed, most of you are, but if you're not, please do that and make sure you hit the little bell icon, because that is what will notify you every time I release a video. I have a crazy busy personal life, and my schedule doesn't always allow me to release videos as on a systematic schedule. I'm getting better at it, but I still have a ways to go. So I may surprise you with a video, kind of like what I did with this live stream. Last night I went, you know what? Enough of trying to plan this video. Let me just pop it up on a live stream and see how it goes. All right. Let me see what else I've got over here. All right. Well, I've got a lot of comments. Quite frankly, as you can see how close I've got to get to the screen, I can't read them all from here. Yes, I wear glasses, and I am too vain to wear them during my live stream. Truth. Okay. Does this technique work for And then they say, and I've got one person over here, does it work for science? Does it work for math? Does it work? So a lot of the STEM students, science, technology, engineering, and math, a lot of them have a little bit of pushback to this because it's obvious that this works for history and the soft sciences and a lot of other things. But a lot of times people, especially my math students, go, oh, no, it's not going to work for that. Yes, it does. You need to adapt it a little bit. Now, as you're going through the chapter, you need to focus on what are the specifics. For example, in math, one of the important things that you need to know are not just the formulas, but the concepts behind the formulas and the definitions of new vocabulary, of new words. So, and this is not just me telling you that it works for that to pat myself on the back. If you were to take the time, like I do, to go through all the comments, you'll see I literally have hundreds of comments from students in the sciences, in technology, in engineering, in math, that talk about how this, by using this technique, it's gotten their mind more organized and prepared to absorb the information that much better. So I hope that helps. Help me. Okay, here's one. I have ADHD, and some people have ADD. I have ADT as a security system. No. I have ADHD and have trouble with focus and concentration. All right. This is a really controversial topic. And there is a lot of scientific publication out there that ADHD does not exist. If you're dealing with a kid that has it, I'm not going to tell you that your kid is not hyperactive. That's not what I'm telling you. But I'm telling you, it is less of a medical condition. If you read about the guy who actually, the scientist who actually came up with the diagnosis, and read what he said about this subject on his deathbed, you'll have a much better understanding of what was really going on. Look, I'm not a medical doctor. Yes, my initials are MD, but I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to give you any medical advice. I will be publishing some information on the effects of a proper diet on ADD and ADHD, because they did a study a number of years ago. I think it was 2011 in Holland, where they did a restricted food diet for, I think it was 300 kids that were diagnosed with ADD. And at the end of 90 days, 72% of them no longer exhibited the signs, all because of changing diet. They eliminated all of the pharmaceuticals from their system and changed their diet. I'm not going to get into all that now. It's controversial. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to give any advice on the subject. I just want you to know I will be releasing information on that subject. However, diet is important. Now, to help me with the expenses on a channel, I have sponsors, and I have a brand new sponsor. So this topic of ADHD and focus and concentration is a perfect opportunity. I've done a video on these guys before. This is a brand new sponsor, and it's called Neuro Gum and Mints. And this is a nootropic. A nootropic is a nutritional supplement that supports your brain function. And it comes in two forms. It comes as chewing gum, and it also comes as mints. Now, inside a box like this, you get a bunch of packages this size, and inside here, there's 9 pieces of chewing gum. So for less than 50 cents, you're able to have a piece of this, and it's got some caffeine in it. It's got some B6. It's got some B12. It's got L-theanine, which is an amino acid that's been proven to support brain function. Bottom line is it'll give you a boost of energy. It'll help you with your focus. It'll help you with your concentration. I hope you go and check it out. There'll be a link to it in the description and also in the first comment after I publish this thing. But try neurogum.com/Matt DiMaio. All right, that's my little commercial on the subject. But I hope you support my sponsors, because it's what helps fund me to be able to do this. This is a very time-consuming process. I love you guys, but I do have to treat this somewhat as a business, even though at this stage of my life, it really is a labor of love. Okay, next question. Here we go. What is bold text? What is bold print, bold text? Quite frankly, I was surprised to get that question, but I think it's because I have so many students from all over the world that their idioms and their expressions may not be the same in their language as it is in English. So that's my assumption. So I've got an American history textbook here, and I'm just going to kind of hold it up to the camera. And you can see, oops, a big heavy book. All right, you can see that you've got the regular size text here. You get your headlines here, and then you've got some bold text here, and then you've got it underneath the captions on the images and all of that. So any of the text that is darker and bolder and more prominent than the regular typeface. That's what I mean by bold print. And going along with that, here's another question I was surprised. What's my definition of a paragraph? Well, I think the definition of a paragraph is the same in every language, but maybe it isn't. And so, I don't want to assume that it is, because literally I have a lot of you, the alphabet and the language that you use, it looks nothing like what I'm writing with here. And so it is where the author decides to break their ideas into chunks. And so usually in most textbooks, and regardless of whatever language it is, the author is not going to just give you one big blob of text. They're going to break each of their points into chunks. So those chunks are what the paragraphs are. And when I talk about it, the reason that you read a first and last sentence is, first of all, it trains your eye to be able to get a little more granular into the chapter. But typically, if it's a well-written textbook, not all of them are, but if it's a good author, the first sentence is going to give you an overview, an introduction to that paragraph. And the last sentence gives you what the last thought in that paragraph is, or sometimes it's a summary thought. And the only reason that you do that is it's for the purposes of discipline, that it gets your mind to go from the big broad look of everything. Now you're going to chunk down a little bit more and more as you're going through the chapter. All right, next question. What should I do about taking notes? Taking notes. All right. I've already talked about the fact that you don't want to merely underline or highlight in your textbook. Yes, you can do it. I'm not telling you don't do it. Personally, I don't think it's much help, but maybe you do. Okay, everybody's a little different. Taking notes is really the key to getting the information into your head. In another one of my videos, I talk about where learning happens. Learning does not happen when you're putting information into your head. Get this. This is super important. Learning does not happen when you're putting information in. Learning happens when you're getting information out. Let me say that again. You want to get the information out of your head in as many different ways as you can. So, taking notes is a big deal. Yes, you can type them up, and that may be faster. But if you want to really get this down where you are just like super powered, take handwritten notes. Now, you can't read my handwriting. Here, you see that? Scribble. MD, the doctor's handwriting. So I have sloppy handwriting. It took me a long time to print this neatly. but I can read my handwriting. And so when you write information out longhand, the information is now coming from your brain. Watch this. Watch this. It's coming from your brain out your hand, and you're using the sense of touch, and you're writing the information down in a series of lines and squiggles and swirls. And then the information is going back into you through your eyes. So there's now a flow of information. It's coming out of you and it's coming back into you. It's crazy to think about it like that, but that's exactly what's going on. So another thing you can do is talk to somebody else about what you've learned. As a matter of fact, that's not even on here. It's not part of the textbook strategy, but it is definitely part of the test preparation strategy, where you get together with a study buddy, even if it's over the phone, and you want to have a conversation where you express your understanding of particular ideas. So you're looking for as many different ways of getting that information out of you as you can. That is why I talk about flashcards, because now it's interactive. On the front of the card, you've got a question. On the back of the card, you've got the answer. You can quiz yourself. And I recommend that you do it out loud. Now, obviously, it depends on where you are. You don't want people looking at you like you're nuts. However, it's become more and more acceptable to talk to yourself as people are walking around with earbuds in, and Bluetooth. Okay, so notes, handwritten notes as you go. Now, you may want to take a couple of drafts of notes. Some of you call it revisions, where you revise your notes. So if it's super important and really tough, really detailed, here's the stuff you want to put in your notes. You want to put down any names, any definitions. That's absolutely critical. Names, new words, new definitions, new vocabulary with the explanation. You want to put down any dates or times. You want to write down any formulas and an explanation of the formula. So in your notes, you can put down whatever else you want, but that stuff is absolutely critical. All right, moving on. Here, I get this one from time to time where people are skeptical about doing all this. And they go, well, can't you just read through it and remember it? Can't you just do that normally? That cracks me up, because if you could do it normally, most people wouldn't be struggling with their textbook. So yeah, go ahead, keep doing it the old-fashioned way, keep doing it the same old way. But what's that going to get you? So my suggestion is do as many of these steps as you can, and you'll see a dramatic change in your ability. Earlier, we were talking about a lot of the science, technology, engineering, and math students. I have a surprising amount, an overwhelming amount to me, of medical students, physicians, nurses, EMTs, emergency medical people. I mean, these are people that are dealing with immediate life and death type stuff, and they have got to know the information. And so they're some of my biggest fans of this information because it's helped them so much. All right, next. I've been doing something like this for years, but wasn't sure why it helped me. Or, oh yeah, I've been doing that for a long time. Yep, good for you. And I mean that, I'm not sarcastic. It is good for you. You see, I didn't invent any of this stuff. I collect it. I put it together. I search for ideas that work. Many students seem to stumble across ideas that just work for them. What I'm doing on my channel is I've combined them. I've collected as many of these different ideas as I can find of techniques, of strategies, of tricks, if you will, that you can use that work in the real world. Look, there's a lot of garbage out there. I don't want to teach you stuff that doesn't have any track record behind it. That's not going to do either one of us any good. And I think that the reason that you've connected with me the way you have. And I got to tell you, it thrills me to no end. But it's that you're getting real results really quick. Real people, real results, real fast. Folks, that's what it's about. All right, let me continue. Isn't this like the SQ3R method? Now, for those of you that have heard of SQ3R, yeah, there's a lot of similarities between that and this. SQ3R stands for survey, question, and then 3 words that each begin with the letter R. So SQ, survey, question, and then read, recite, review. So yeah, there's similarities. There are some differences. I don't want to parse my words about it all. Yeah, you want to call it SQ3R? Wonderful. Technically, it's really not, but close enough. Look, as I said, I don't take credit for inventing these ideas. I'm smart, but I ain't that smart. So what I've done, and because of the decades that I've been teaching this stuff, students tell me what works for them. And I'll talk about my background in just a moment, because some of you think I'm a college professor, but I'll explain that in a moment because it's one of the questions. But I am always looking for what works in the real world that students that are top producers are already using that's gotten them results. So that's where these ideas come from. All right. What about using these ideas on other types of books? So I've got one of my books. All right, a couple of shameless plugs again. So here's 2 of my books. These are on Amazon. So here's my book on how to remember people's names, and this is really how I got my international reputation, because of doing stand-up seminars on the subject, and I built instant credibility with my audience, because whether there was 30, 50, 100, 200 people in the audience, if I met them before showtime, I'd be able to call them by name from stage. And like I said, there's videos of me doing that on YouTube. And then my other book, Straight A Strategies for Successful Online Learning. For those of you that are taking online courses and exclusively online university and stuff like that, it's a good book. Both of them are available on Amazon. Again, in the description, you'll see links to all of this stuff. All right. But in a book like this, yes, there's bold print, but there's no quiz. You don't need to read the first and last sentence. And so depending on the kind of book you're reading and depending on the result you're looking to get, you may not need to use all these steps. Now, if you're in an English lit class and you're going through a story and you've got to write an essay on the story, you don't need to use all of these steps. But I do recommend flipping through the chapter and seeing what's there. This way, are there illustrations? Are there maps? Is there some kind of other explanation going on? And it just familiarizes yourself. And then I do recommend going through and reading the bold print, and absolutely take written notes as you're going. All right. I hope that helps you with other types of books. And I do have a video on my channel about how to retain what you read. So on my channel, you can go retain what you read and have a more detailed explanation. All right, this is a new one that I started getting just these last couple of months. What about feeding this information into ChatGPT 3 and 4 and asking it to summarize? Great, couldn't hurt. I don't know what that's going to do for getting the information into your head. Yes, you can ask it to summarize stuff, but look, there's a lot of subjects that you've got to be really specific on what you're trying to learn and what your methodology is. So I don't know that feeding it into ChatGPT is going to, or any other AI, is really going to get the information from your source document into your head. But again, I'm not telling you don't do it. I'm just saying it's not going to give you the result that we're going to get here. All right, next. What school or university do I teach at? I am not a college professor. I am not a school teacher. Never have been. However, here's how I got into all of this. The year was 1979. There was no such thing as a personal computer in people's homes. It would be 2 years before people even ever heard of a personal computer. And that was in August of 1981 that IBM came out with the first computer for people's homes. Prior to that, the world was operating on something called punch cards. These were thin cardboard, manila covered rectangular cards that had little square or little rectangular holes punched in them. And you would get it with your gas bill, your electric bill. And they would take this deck of cards and feed it into a computer, and the computer would read the holes. And that's how you got your bill and paid your bill and all that stuff. All right. So in 1979, I went to work for a chain of computer programming schools in Union, New Jersey. And I noticed that my students, most of whom were not college graduates, some were, but they were all people that were out with full-time jobs working in the world that was changing, and they wanted to be trained for a new career. Now, in 1979, in the United States, we had lines to buy gasoline around the block. It was the economy was in shambles. We were going through a tough time. And so people, the job market was in turmoil. And so a lot of people wanted to be retrained for some new career. And the buzz was this thing about computers was going to be a big deal. Sounds ridiculous to talk about it now, but in 1979, that's the way the world was. And so I went to work for this chain of schools, and the problem was I had a high dropout rate. And so my income was dependent on the school collecting its full tuition. So anytime somebody dropped out, I would get what was called a chargeback on my paycheck, because I was paid based on collected tuitions. I was in charge of enrollments for the school. All right. So I was looking for a way to stop the dropouts, but I was not a very good student. I myself am a college dropout. I finished 2 years at Villanova University, decided I wanted to become a professional musician, left school, wound up getting into the working world, and life had its twists and turns for me. Well, I couldn't use my own experience as a student. So what I did was I began to research everything I could find on what makes somebody a good student. And I was shocked at the amount of literature and information that was out there on how to take notes, how to pay attention, how to listen better, how to take different kinds of exams. I was blown away with all of this stuff. And so I attended live seminars. I bought audio cassette tape programs. I know, like Me and the Dinosaurs, right? I bought books on the subject. And then I distilled all of this stuff down into a little 90-minute class that I called What School Never Taught You About Learning. And twice a semester, I would teach it to my new incoming class of students. So once, about a week or two into their new class, because by that point, they were very receptive to helping, how to learn things faster. Because if I had taught them at the beginning, their egos would be too big and go, oh, no, I don't need you telling me how to be a good student. But a week or two into this, well, all of a sudden they realized, holy mackerel, this computer programming stuff is harder than I realized. I need some help. That's when I began to teach it. And then about 2 weeks before they took their final exams, I taught the exact same stuff again. Now, the result was I not only reduced the dropout rate of the schools, but much more importantly, I increased the job placement rate. Because when these young people went in on a job interview, they actually knew what they were talking about. Go figure. And that is when the magic happened. Because I began to get calls from the companies who hired my graduates, wondering what we were doing at our school that was getting our students to perform so good on the job. Then I began to get invited to do after dinner speaking engagements. So the DPMA, the Data Processing Managers Association, was the first group to ever hire me to do regular speaking engagements. So I did a lot of different chapters there. And then the ASM, the Association of Systems Managers. And so I wound up doing after dinner speaking engagements and then selling tickets to my weekend seminars. That's how I got started back in 1980 teaching this kind of stuff. So I've been doing it a long, long time. So that gives you an understanding of where I came from, what my school background is. Now, I wound up lecturing at every major college in New Jersey and the New York metro area back in the 80s. So and I'm not a college graduate, but I had the deans of universities that were attending my classes. In fact, I became really good friends with one of them, and we went on vacation to Jamaica together with a bunch of students. And to this day, I'm still very close friends with a professor at Montclair State University, Dr. Rob Gilbert. And even though I don't travel to do speaking engagements anymore, he has me from time to time do online presentations to his students on the subject of how to learn things fast, mostly on memory retention. All right. Here's one that's not related exactly to this, but it's on I get this question all the time on my channel, on this video. People wonder, why do I still reply to comments after all these years? Look, you see a lot of other YouTubers really don't interact with their audience. And I think for me, the big turn on for me doing this is that I get to meet all of you. Look, most of my audience is between 18 and 24 years old, 60% male, 18 to 24 is about 2/3 of my audience. And so I'm old enough to be your grandfather. So I call myself Uncle Matt, and I look to connect with you. And so I find that if I do something a little bit extra, where you actually feel like you get to connect with me somehow, and that helps us both. It turns me on because that's what keeps me motivated to keep doing this stuff, because it ain't easy. So I'm not complaining. I love it, but it's a lot of time and a lot of hard work. But I do it because I get to fulfill my mission. So I have an actual mission statement. I am on a mission to make a positive, lasting difference to the lives of students of all ages around the world. And one last question. I think this makes exactly 20 questions. What's the deal with writing on the wall? Well, I kind of talked about that in my 10 weirdest comments video. I was in a library, and the room that they gave me had floor to ceiling whiteboards. I've never been in a room like that before. Personally, I loved it. Of course, the markers that they gave me were a little bit skashot. They were running out of ink, as I talk about in my 10 weirdest comments video. All right, so I think I've covered everything. Now I want to take a look over here. Any more tips? 87 was my big, hello, Arian. Oh, I see people communicating with me in a lot of different languages. How to retain the information. All right, so look, I would love to be able to answer the questions, but quite frankly, I got to get so close to the computer, and it's just going to be annoying to have me try and scroll through this. I'll do what I can to go through some of these comments a little bit later. I don't have anybody as a monitor feeding me questions. I'm a one-man band, and hopefully someday that's not going to be the case, but that's how it is right now. So I'll go through and see if there's anything else that I can answer for you, or I'll just shoot another video on the subject. As far as memory goes, I already told you, you can go to anincrediblememory.com, anincrediblememory.com, and you'll see about my memory training course. It's not for all of you. I know that. I hope you try out the Neuro Gum. Whether you do or not, I still love you. But whatever you can do to help out the channel. I do have super chats and stuff like that. So if you want to send me a little gift through thanks, I'll never say no. I'll take all the thanks I can get. I just want to wrap up. I know that a lot of you have already finished school for the year. Over the summer, I'm going to be doing videos about how do you make the best use of your time with a couple of months off. So I want to talk about how you develop new skills and what are some of the new skills or what are some of the new personal improvement things that you can embark on. Also, I'm going to be giving you a little bit more of the motivation type videos. That's an area of real importance to me. The great motivational speaker Zig Ziglar was talking about motivation, and he had somebody complain to him, and he says, yeah, motivation is great, but it wears off too quick. And he said, yeah, it's kind of like bathing. If you don't do it every day, pretty soon you stink. And so we do need regular shots of vitamins. So I'm looking to give you a regular shot of vitamin DiMaio on a regular basis. I think that's it. Let me take a look and see if there's any last little questions. You may be a one-man band, but you have a great tune. Well, you know what? I don't think I can top that line. Who said that? Where did it go? All right. I'd love to give you credit. I just don't see where you went. But wonderful. The rest of you can see the comments easier than I can. Look, I love you guys. Thank you very much for being there. Do what you can to support the channel, even if it's just like, comment, share, post your comment. Let YouTube know that you like what's going on over here. And not just for my benefit, but it helps reach so many other people around the world. And you know my favorite closing expression, some of you that have, especially those of you that have watched my older videos, you know that I often say that everything I teach takes a little bit of work and effort, but it's worth it. Always remember that the fastest way to get to the top is to get off your bottom. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully I'll give you more notice the next time I do a live stream. I want to see how this came out on the review and figure out how to take it from there. Okay, everybody. Bye for now.